We should already be on. We're 10 seconds into the show.
We're live now?
Right now I have to stop
You're supposed
saying.
to say you're live.
We're live. Well, shoes are off. Luds and I, are we on the show right now? Nice. Luds and I are barefoot because we're in the podcast studio today. Was Brett Hull's foot in the crease? Should the goal have been allowed?
Oh, God.
All of those questions can be answered with yes. We're going to bring on some Buffalo Sabres guests today to not just talk about 1999, but also the current Buffalo Sabres and a lot of struggles, but maybe some brighter futures. Let's start it here, DLLS. Kat said she's going to unmute our mics, and we are here. DLLS Stars, it is Wednesday, September 3rd. More importantly, it is Buffalo Sabres Day on the other 31. We got a break from it yesterday to hang out with Nathan Bastian. If you missed that show, please go watch. Crazy stories about his expansion draft to Seattle and plenty more. But today we're moving on to the Buffalo Sabres, and we're going to bring on our guest, Joe Yerdon from Bleacher Report. Joe, thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing great, guys. It's nice to be here with you. And I heard rumors 1999 was going to come up. I don't know how that keeps coming up after all this time. It's crazy.
Well, I heard you say, Sam, we're moving on.
Yeah, we are.
Well, let's move on.
We're going to move on, but we're also going to talk about that as well. You want to? Okay, how about this? Let me ask you.
Joe take over.
Do you want to start with that?
Yeah, start with that.
Let's start with 1999 and get it out of the way, Joe. Okay, before we bring up anything, your take on the 1999 Brett Hull Game 6 goal that won the Stanley Cup for the Dallas Stars.
It was the 1 year out of 100 that it probably shouldn't have been a goal, but it would have been a goal in all the other 100 years. So, whatever. It was one of the dumbest rules that ever got put into hockey. And it was so dumb they took it away like 5 seconds after Brett Hull scored. So, whatever. People here, listen, I'm not from Buffalo. I didn't grow up a Sabres fan. So I don't have the same burning, part of my brain that gets so mad about it all the time. But, my main memory of that game was I fell asleep on my girlfriend's couch and woke up to Gary Thorne saying, "Oh, hang on a minute," and then showing the replay over and over again. And I'm like, well, that's not a goal. Well, not this year anyways. And it didn't matter. I was watching Mike Modano skate around with the cup. So it didn't matter. So it's, it was done and over with.
Done and over with. And I like to move on, but every time anything's posted, it's like, congratulations to the 20-year anniversary or whatever. There's some Buffalo fans in the comments. Wasn't a goal. Shouldn't have been allowed. So let's go through it right now. Real quick, Kat, pop up the screenshots. The rule is...
Now, can Joe see this?
The rule was, Joe can see this.
Okay.
The rule was that when if the puck was not in the crease or the player did not have possession of the puck, you cannot go in the crease or the goal is disallowed. So here's the original shot. I believe it was from the wall from Modano or Lettinen. Puck comes in the crease. Hasek makes the save. Go ahead, Kat, to the next one. Hole's in there. He gets, who was that again that tried to clear him out? Do you remember?
Number 19.
19, nice.
Yeah.
Oh. So next one, Kat, Hasek scrambling. You can see here Brett Hull kicking the puck. So the explanations that I read said that this kick was what gave Brett Hull possession of the puck. Correct. So go ahead to the next one. He makes a great play to kick it to his stick. This is the famous picture right here that everybody looks at. The skate in the crease, the puck not in the crease. But as we just said, they deemed that he had possession of the puck at this moment. Gets it to his stick, and then the next one is history as he scores. The Stars win Game 6 and win the Stanley Cup 1999. The reviews went on forever. I watched a ton of videos on this last night. They had the Stars already in the room drinking beer out of the Stanley Cup while the Sabres refused to leave the room. So much chaos going on. It was just a crazy moment. So, Joe, let me ask you this. Why do you think, and the answer might be obvious, why do you think Buffalo fans still jump in this? Because it's not like this was a play that if it went the other way, Buffalo wins the Stanley Cup, right? It was Game 6. Buffalo needed to win 2 more So why is this still burning so deep in Buffalo fans' minds?
It plays into a few different things for Buffalo fans. There's always a feeling that the referees are out to get them. If you pay attention to Twitter or any social media during a Bills game and there's a questionable call, there's been more than a few of them the last few playoffs for the Bills that got fans all up in arms about stuff. So it plays into that sort of, I don't know if it's an insecurity or whatever, but there's that side of it. It's also, that's as close as the Sabres have ever come to winning the Cup. I mean, when they were there in the 70s, I mean, they were against the Flyers. That was not a close series, but they're there in 99 and they had the greatest goalie in hockey in Dominik Hasek. And, you know, when you've got that guy to kind of neutralize everything, that makes you believe you can win all of it. And, you know, at that time in the NHL, scoring was low and you got a guy that can stop everybody. Well, you're going to think you've got the best chance to win. And he really did. But, you know, you get a weird rule that only existed for 1 year. It plays into a lot of the conspiracy theory people that happen to be involved in Buffalo sports when it comes to fandom. But that doesn't help. And then, you know, they've only made it even that far 1-2 other times. And those times were 17 years ago, you know, like 18, 19 years ago. So it's, you know, you get a moment like that, it sticks in everybody's mind. It's kind of like Scott Norwood missing the field goal in Super Bowl 25.
All right, Luds, we're going to move on. Craig Ludwig won that Stanley Cup, second Stanley Cup. But before we move on, I want to remind everybody, Big Brothers, Big Sisters month here at DLLS. This whole week, we've replaced our super chat button with a donate button. So go donate to Big Brothers, Big Sisters. We have all kinds of awesome things going on this week. There is the information down on the bottom. Luds, move on from 1999.
So I don't even get to respond.
Oh,
I'm moving on.
You can respond.
No,
you were yelling at me.
No, I want to move on to something bigger, better, brighter for the Buffalo Sabres.
Okay.
Joe, it's only been 14 years since they've been in the playoffs, right? So we're moving on and we're coming to some bigger, more optimistic times.
Yes.
So generally, I would start you out with a question about the general manager, right? But I look at this and I go, I think it's got to go higher than that. So can you talk to me, what are your feelings with Terry Pegula and how he handles or doesn't, or however you feel about Pegula running or being the head of this whole program?
Well, Terry's, I'd love to say that we talk to Terry a lot and we hear from him a bunch, but we haven't heard him since he fired Jason Botterill back in 2020, I think it was. He hasn't spoken to us on the record. He's been at different events and whatever, but the last interview or press conference availability he's had, period, was when they fired Jason Botterill, which is incredible, frankly. So, you know, I mean, they're building a new stadium for the Bills. The Sabres haven't made the playoffs in ages. So, you know, there's a lot that he could be talking about, but we don't hear from him. We hear from Kevyn Adams. We hear from Lindy Ruff. We hear from everybody else. But when it comes to Terry, people like to compare the Bills and the Sabres and, you know, it's the same ownership. How are things so different? And the thing I like to point out is that Terry didn't grow up a Bills fan. He grew up a Sabres fan. He was a big Sabres fan. You know, you think back to when he met Gilbert Perreault after he bought the team, and he had tears in his eyes. That was his hero growing up. So Terry's like having one of your biggest fans owning the team and pulling the strings and making the calls and wanting to be heard in on the decisions. You know, one of the reasons they fired Jason Botterill was that ownership felt like they weren't being listened to. And Kevyn Adams is a guy that's been involved with the organization in some fashion or another for years, going back to, you know, when he was helping, you know, run the hockey academy, running Harbor Center, the rink next door, all of this stuff. So he's somebody who's very indebted to the Pegulas, and he's a guy that Pegulas love. So he's also a guy that's got to make sure that Terry's opinions are heard and respected, and for better or worse, heeded when it comes to decisions. So that's, you know, he's not the GM. He's not like Jerry Jones, so to speak, but he has influence on a lot of the decisions that are made player-wise. So for better or for worse, depending on how you feel about different signings and whatnot, he plays a big part in it, and it gets downplayed a lot because Kevyn Adams does have total control of running the show, but Terry's voice is heard very, very prominently throughout a lot of the decisions.
Slide into that then for me, because that would be my next question, is your thoughts on how Kevyn has built or is trying to construct this team.
I think Kevyn was handed a very difficult job. He was hired and he was happy to be hired, but when he took over, he had to fire tons of people. He had to basically clean house of all the scouts, the AHL coaching staff, the coaches, everything. Everybody got essentially swept out. And Kevyn had to kind of build everything back up again. And then you factor in that, Jack Eichel sees all this change happening and he wants out. You're running into Sam Reinhart's contract coming up in a couple of years and he ain't coming back. They had a lot of hard decisions they had to work on immediately. And that makes a tough job for even the most experienced GM. I mean, imagine, like a Ken Holland or somebody like that walking into that job day one. It's like, all right, fire everybody. By the way, your best player wants a trade. Your other best player is probably not coming back. You might need to trade him too. We've got a couple other guys that aren't happy as well. Good luck. That's kind of what Kevyn Adams has had to run into. But, he's been on the job now 5 years. This is his team. This whole team is what he's built. And if they weren't guys that were drafted by him, they were guys that were good enough to keep around after the fact. You don't trade a Rasmus Dahlin unless Rasmus Dahlin says he wants out, which he's not at that point. Not yet. But
not yet.
If things keep going badly, you can't blame him if he did. So we're not at that point yet. Dahlin's a ruthless competitor. So he wants this as bad as anybody. But, if they keep spinning their wheels and they keep finishing out of the playoffs, I mean, Dahlin might want out, and then there might be another GM and a whole bunch of other people that might come in to try to be the next person with the answers.
Well, okay. Well, I was going to ask one more, but you led me right into that. Is the next person just got hired there? And I'm curious, who hired Jarmo Kekalainen? If people don't know, who was that? Kevyn, or was that Terry Pegula? And do you think it's difficult for Kevyn? I mean, having a guy that's been a general manager, has a good reputation, kind of looking over his shoulder.
Well, they were looking for an experienced person to kind of help out with the staff. And I believe that was Kevyn. That was part of that. They wanted another voice, another experienced person to be involved. I don't know that was Terry that was involved. I think if it was Terry that was leading the charge on that one, I think it would have been a more familiar face. Jarmo's different because he's not somebody with any Sabre connections. He has no entanglements with the organization previously. He's not a guy who, played for the Sabres. He's not a guy who has any history with the organization. He's completely an outside voice, which would make you tend to believe that if Kevyn Adams is fired, he's the next guy in line, because you're going to have to change things up in a big way to kind of clear the air, and Jarmo would be that guy. Certainly Jarmo's history in Columbus, he's found ways to be successful in a market that doesn't have a lot of heft to it. It's kind of similar to Buffalo. I know the situation in Columbus is its own brand of particular, but he did well there. It's just that sometimes change is needed, and that's what happened there. But Jarmo's a different kind of voice. He's a different kind of experience there, and he's going to stay in the background, so to speak. Like, he's not going to be sort of, puppeteering behind the scenes, but his insight is a lot different than the staff they've got on hand, because those guys, the staff on hand now are all very they're Kevyn's guys, they're handpicked, or they've been in the organization for a very long time. So those are all very familiar voices. Jarmo's a completely different guy.
Go ahead,
Sam. Can I go now?
I'll shut up.
Okay. No, you're good. You're good. We're going to hit a break. Okay, so I don't even get to ask a question. Joe, we're going to hit a break, and then we will get more with Joe Yerdon and the Buffalo Sabres right after this. All I get to do is talk about ads. That's my favorite thing. But this is actually a fun one for me, and then it's game time. Game time is simply the best way to get tickets. NFL season is about to start. I believe our Dallas Cowboys play tomorrow, I think. Right? Against Who they play? Eagles?
I don't know why you're asking me
the
about
Super
the
Bowl
Cowboys.
champion Eagles. I only know that because our boy John Anderson actually wrote an article today about the Cowboys. But Game Time is the best way to get tickets if you want to go, whether it's Cowboys, NFL, whether it's college football. I just used it to get tickets to the Miami Hurricanes at SMU Mustangs college football game. It's a super simple way to do it. They everything's included, so you see what you pay. They have an awesome way to see exactly where you're going to sit, and they have a really cool way of using the 180 view to see what's to your right, what's to your left, so you get the full view of what it will look like to sit in those seats at that game. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code DLLS for $20 off your first purchase. That's $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account, redeem code DLLS for $20 off. Tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today.
This is where Owen would say, "Thanks, Sam." You know that moment? The one you realize you left your favorite sunglasses at the lake or on the roof of your car or at the gas station. Well, Sam's been there too. But then Sam found Shady Rays, and it changed the game. These sunglasses are made for real life, seriously good looking, polarized, durable, and not stupidly expensive. And here's the best part, because Sam's cheap. If you lose or break them, Shady Rays will send you a brand new pair. No guilt trip, no replacement. So now I actually wear sunglasses with Sam without fear.
Yep.
At concerts, on the boat, wherever you go. Shady Rays is everywhere that has your back.
Yep.
We've teamed up with Shady Rays to bring you an exclusive offer. Head to shadyrays.com and use code DLLS35 for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people.
Thanks, Craig.
Oh, you're welcome, Sam.
All right, let's bring Joe back on here. Joe, I promised you we were going to move on from 1999, and we are. But this question is going to talk about someone who was involved in that, and that's Lindy Ruff. I'm not even going to give you a real question here. Just take us through why they made that decision, the whole transition, and then I guess where is his leash at in this whole thing with the way that Buffalo's going?
If you go back to the day they fired Don Granato as head coach, and Kevyn Adams described the kind of coach that he wanted to bring in, it sounded like he was describing Lindy Ruff to a T, which makes sense because he was an assistant on Lindy's staff back in 2011, 2012, had plenty of experience with him and knew him for years already. And of course, everybody in Dallas knows Lindy Ruff, because he came from Buffalo to become a Stars coach. But his style of game, his hard-nosed, not exactly cuddly personality was what they were looking for to kind of change the attitude in the room, I guess, or the way players were paying attention to the game itself and all that. They wanted their young guys to kind of grow up, and the players even said after Don was fired that they wanted more accountability. They wanted somebody that was going to hold their feet to the fire. And well, they got their wish. And a lot of guys didn't really adjust to it very quickly and struggled with it last season. And for a lot of those young guys, that was going from Don Granato to Lindy Ruff is a 180-degree change of everything. Like that's, Don's a player's coach. He's a teacher. He's a guiding hand. Lindy is a taskmaster. It's do your job or you're not playing, period. And that kind of adjustment was really tough. And Lindy even admitted to us that he was kind of going easy on the guys the first few weeks of the season because he wanted to get a feel for their personalities and, how much they could take and how much they can't take. And I think, if it was classic old school Lindy, we would have seen a lot of lineup changes very early in the season and some guys getting benched a lot sooner than they did. But he tried to be fair and try to do that. But, once losses started piling up, you kind of run out of time to make those choices. And, once guys seem to snap around to what he wanted and what he's looking for and what he needs from them, things kind of changed. The second half of the season, they were a much better team. The problem was they had an 0-10-3 run in November and December that ended the season for them, essentially. That put them so far back, they couldn't come back from that. And seeing Lindy to be at a loss for words as those losses mounted was stunning, honestly, because, he's a guy that after losses, he's not going to exactly, hold back his feelings, but he didn't have answers for how to fix what was going wrong at that time. But, the second half of the year, things changed, and you're hoping that carries over into this season, but there's still a lot of things that need to get straightened up. The goaltending, the special teams, all that stuff has to get a lot better for them to be a playoff team.
I'm glad you brought up Lindy. I
do.
I had a couple little chats with Lindy when he was here. There were some things that I was commenting on that he didn't prefer to hear, I think, and called me into the office and wanted to show me videos of how they play and things like that. So, Joe, this team, they can score goals, right? They're in the top 10 in the league, I think, last year. Again, it is about the other end of the rink. And like you mentioned, the goaltending and everything else. And it was kind of similar to some things that were happening here at one point. And I had made a comment like, when your goaltending isn't where you expect it to be, I think you have to tweak your game a little bit. You don't exploit your weaknesses, which was the goaltending issue here for a period of time, or a time in particular. And I didn't understand opening the game up. So I guess when it comes to me for a Lindy question, and you mentioned it right in the beginning about having the dominator there, you got a good goalie. You can play a certain way because they clean up a lot of the mess. Does he make an adjustment to play a little bit better in his own zone, or coming back the other way? Or is it just get directed at the goaltender? Or is it more what's happening in front of him from a systemic, situation?
Well, I think part of how they're fixing that is the changes they've made on defense this year. You trade JJ Peterka away to get Michael Kesselring. He's a big guy, big shot, lays the body, will fight occasionally. That's the exact kind of guy that they've been wanting to have on defense here in Buffalo, I think, probably since 1999, frankly, because there haven't been a lot of those big thumper type of defensemen. Not that Kesselring's a thumper, but he hits hard. He's 6'5", 6'6". He covers a lot of space and he'll fight. So that covers all the needs for what Sabres fans want. But you throw him in there, you add Connor Timmins to the group, and you trade away Connor Clifton. You've got a different sort of makeup for the defensive group, and one that hopefully helps Owen Power break out a little bit more, because he's been good at the little things that you don't see in the box score, but the box score stuff isn't there and fans hate it. And he doesn't play physically defensively, so fans hate that too. But Dahlin does all that stuff. He's an elite defenseman, so they're fine there. But to have better play in the defensive end, to be tougher around the net, clear guys away, all the dirty work stuff, they needed guys to do that to help out the goaltending. And frankly, they need it to help the penalty kill. Penalty kill was so bad last year, and it's gotten worse the last couple years. Power play needs to be better, but defensively speaking, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen could use the help in his own end to help him clean things up. You can see him get frustrated last year watching some of the decisions made around his net. And when you see that body language go for a goalie where he's just like, oh, come on, guys, that's bad. That's really bad. And we saw that a few times from him in the second half of the season. And I think fixing that is going to go a long way to helping out. And if it doesn't help, it could be tough, because it's Luukkonen, it's Alex Lyon, and you got Devin Levi still hanging around in the AHL, so he's waiting for his chance too.
Glad you brought up Owen Power. I don't know, did you know Owen Power played college hockey?
I was going to warn you about this. So if there's any college people on the roster, Sam goes.
I was going to ask about it whether you brought it up or not, but Owen Power, big name player from Michigan in the Big Ten, had all kinds of accolades in the Big Ten. I think he has 3 full seasons now. What's his ceiling, and what are the expectations around Buffalo for him right now?
Fans would love to see him be more physical. But I've been trying to tell the fans for years, that's never been his game. Yeah. It's literally never been his game. He was told at a young age, you can't be physical. You're going to be in the penalty box all game long, because he was bigger than everybody when he was younger. So he just said, you know what? I'm also faster. I'm also better with the puck than everybody, so I'll just skate by everyone and make plays, which turned out to be really good for him. I want to see more of that from him now. I want to see the confidence there in his game where he can do those things and not have to worry about it. A lot of times he's so cognizant of where his defense partner is and what his responsibilities are and supposed to be, that sometimes he's too cognizant of what his defense partner should be doing too. And he's like, that guy's in deep. I better get back.
Right.
No. Don't do that. You stay up and tell your partner to get their rear end back there and play defense instead. So I think that's the hope with bringing in Kesselring and Timmins, that one of those two guys are going to be able to be the right-handed shot partner so that he can stay on the left side and essentially take the big step that we saw Dahlin take a couple of years ago. I think there's still a huge upside for Power's game. And it's not like he's been bad. We're talking like a 35, 40-point season. You want to see more, but he's also fighting with Dahlin for ice time and power play minutes and all that stuff. And that's really tough to do when you've got Rasmus Dahlin there. So, and Bo Byram's still there too. So it's a little bit of a crowded house, but, to me, that Power does all the other little things so well. He's got the long reach. He can deny entries. He's so good positionally. He shuts down passes and shots just as likely. But he's not pushing guys out of the crease. He's not, dunking guys in the corner. He's not doing any of that stuff. So people think he's not doing his job. He does everything else. He's great.
Joe, you mentioned Byron before, and I was thinking about him, and I was just curious, is it surprising to you that he signed a 2-year deal, and maybe that was on his end or maybe the team's end? I'm curious about the length of that. The other thing is, I think I was listening to an interview. He might have been doing it with Marty Baron, and sometimes I like to listen how players say things. And he was talking about getting an opportunity here, getting an opportunity there. But there was one line that caught my attention. He said something like, "I've got a lot more to give," and so I'm not. Is he asking for more opportunity or more ice time? And do you think that has anything to do with the length of the contract?
I think he definitely wants more ice time. And I think he'll get it. I think he'll be back on Dahlin's pairing again this year, just with the other moves that they made. It just kind of makes sense to me because Byram had his best play of the season while he played with Dahlin, which, let's be fair, Dahlin helps make everybody look a lot better by being an extremely great defenseman. So, but it allowed Byram to be a little bit more like what I think we expected him to be when he was drafted, with a top 5 pick. I think that's what everybody kind of wanted from him, is to kind of push the game, be a little physical, and just play the game the way he wants to. I think he wants to have that power play time. He kind of has to fight with Power for it on the second power play. Teams have gone away from having 2 defensemen on the power play, so it's a little awkward when you see teams do it. And they tried it last year, it just didn't work. But there was a lot of things that didn't work on the power play. But in Byram's case, the 2-year deal to me just made sense business-wise. Maybe not for the Sabres' sake, because you're talking about, if things aren't going well, you're talking about trading them in a year and a half, maybe at the deadline, because it walks them right to unrestricted free agency. And that's not ideal for anybody except for Bo Byram, because now he might be able to really clean up in a couple of years on a free agent deal or an extension with Buffalo if it really goes well here. But it was an awkward summer because the feeling once the season ended and we spoke with him, it really felt like he was going to be traded for a forward upgrade. And it never materialized. And then Peterka was traded for a defenseman, and we're like, okay, what's going on here? None of this computes. And yeah, they re-signed Byram, and he's good. Like, it's not like he's a bad player; he's a very good player. But you do wonder how they're going to replace some of the offense lost from Peterka. But you're asking your younger forwards to kind of step up and grow up a bit there too.
All right, Joe, last one for you here. Something we've been doing with all of our guests on this series. From your perspective, being Buffalo, what do you think of the Dallas Stars going into 2025-26?
I think I'm going to go into my 3rd straight year at Bleacher Report picking them to win the Stanley Cup final.
Well, stop doing it then.
You know what? I'm starting to feel guilty. I said it 2 years ago that when I picked them that year, that this was a team that is built to win, and they're ready to do it now that they've got Rantanen involved. And I know the Robertson thing is going to be talked about forever until something happens there. Either he resigns or there's a move, which would be crazy to move him, but I get it. they're loaded. Dallas is absolutely loaded. I think I think the questions for them are on defense outside of Harley and Heiskanen, obviously, but you want the depth to be a little bit better there. But Jake Ottinger's so good, and he even had like a slightly off season last year, but he was still great. Casey DeSmith helped make up for some of that. Playoffs. Forget whatever happened in the playoffs there, but this is a team that's got so much talent, and they've still got guys coming up through the AHL that can make it there. It's just the West is a murder slog in the playoffs. I mean, just the division alone is absolutely sinister. I mean, you're fighting to finish first, and if you don't finish first, you're playing Winnipeg or Colorado. Maybe now you're playing St. Louis. Maybe you're playing Utah in the first round, and it's like, oh, geez, like we got to get past these guys, and then we got to play Winnipeg, St. Louis, somebody else really good, and then you're playing Vegas or Edmonton or LA if they could ever beat Edmonton, I guess maybe, which doesn't seem likely. Anyways, but like it is such an evil road to try to get to the Cup final that I understand why Dallas hasn't gotten over the hump, but at the same point, I'm like, just get there once because I know they can win it.
All right, Joe. Anything else?
No, that's great. I was going to ask something. I know we're going to bleed into the other one, so I'm just going to leave it alone.
Yes, we get notorious of dragging on here once in a while because we love having you, Joe. You were great. Thanks so much, and thanks for being a good sport about the whole 1999 conversation. Rachel Lenzi is next, and maybe we won't have to talk to her about it. But Joe, thanks so much for hopping on with us.
Thank you, Joe.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
All right, there goes Joe Yerdon of Bleacher Report. Next up is Rachel Lenzi of Buffalo News, and more Buffalo Sabres talk right after this. Before we get to that Cowboys trip you guys are dying to hear me talk about. No, I said before, Kat. Before we get to it, we're going to talk about something more important. And that's Big Brothers, Big Sisters. This whole month, first of all, ALLCITY Network has partnered with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, which is amazing. They do some incredible things. I'm going to read something off their website real quick. Their mission is to create and support one-to-one mentoring relationships that ignite the power and promise of youth. 96% of their littles maintain or improve their grades. 93% intend to finish high school. 71% maintain or improve relationship with their parents. And 97% of littles say their relationship with their big is very important to them. So why not donate? We've replaced our Super Chat button with a donate button below. So go ahead and find that. We have all the information, link in the description. Big Brothers, Big Sisters all week, all month here at DLLS and ALLCITY, so make sure you support. Now we could talk about the DLS Cowboys trip. DLS is headed to Las Vegas with True Fan Travel for a once-in-a-lifetime experience. The Cowboys and DLS Sports are headed to Vegas for the first time ever to play the Las Vegas Raiders at Allegiant Stadium on Monday Night Football. True Fan Travel is bringing the ultimate Dallas diehard experience to Sin City, even with self-travel packages available. Join hundreds of passionate fans for a legendary weekend with Cowboys pride, unbeatable nightlife, and a stadium takeover at Allegiant for Monday Night Football. Expect exclusive fan events, premium accommodations, and unmatched game day energy while staying at the luxurious Mandalay Bay. Amazing trip. 3-night stay at the Mandalay Bay, game tickets, VIP parties, and plenty of exclusive stuff with the DLS crew and diehard fans. This is how Dallas does Vegas, so make sure you book now at truefantravel.com and get there for what should be a good game. 31-24, Ardell says, for the Raiders. Let's move on now. We have our guest. We have Rachel Lenzi of Buffalo News coming in to join the show. Rachel, how are you? Welcome.
Hi, guys. How's it going? It's good to see Craig Ludwig. Craig, a lady never tells, but I remember watching you when you won a Stanley Cup with the Montreal Canadiens, and you had those massive shin guards to block shots.
All right. Let's take every other question off the table.
I remember
Let's just talk about Craig Ludwig for the next 30 minutes.
Rachel, why? Why do you got to start like that?
Why not? Hey, you got to be recognized. I'm trying to make you feel important. So
those were the good old days, right? Right. Okay. Well, you haven't had many good old days in Buffalo there, have you?
No. Full disclosure, this is my first year covering the Sabres. I covered college football for the last 10, 12 years. And when I took the Sabres beat, everybody said two things to me. Oh, congratulations. That's great. You're covering the NHL. Or you sure you want to get into this? I said, I covered some pretty bad college football teams. I covered, some pretty bad hockey teams when I was covering college in the AHL. Used to cover the Sabres minor league teams as well, but I'm glad to be back covering hockey. It's a sport I've always enjoyed.
Well, Rachel, we were talking to Joe about this also. 14 years without playing a playoff game. Where do you think that there could be a tweak anywhere, whether it's management, coaching, players, systems? Is there anything that you can point to? And don't say all of the above, but is there an area?
Out, right?
Yes. Is there an area there that you think that they should start when it comes to improvement or tweaking something?
Where do we begin? Not everywhere, but my first thought is one, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. He's got to raise his game, play consistently.
Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen.
I'm going to think that's going to be my earworm today. There's got to be consistency in goal. They also have to establish a hierarchy in goal. There's UPL. They've signed Alex Lyon. Always want to get a good, consistent number 2. Devin Levi is the goalie of the future, but it might help him to get that one more year of consistent reps in the AHL to build up, because he had a very strong AHL year. But in the few games that he was in the NHL, wasn't great. As the Sabres went, he went, and vice versa. Not good. I think it's got to start in goal. I also think Ryan McLeod, the Sabres showed a big investment in him by signing him to that $5 million a year contract. And, he's going to be the guy to pick up the slack where JJ Peterka, had it last year and then got moved to Utah as well, too. So I think they also have to establish a leader offensively, or someone who's going to rise to the occasion a little more offensively. So yeah, goaltending, stronger offensive production.
All right, Rachel, I promise I'm not piling on. These are just facts. It just sounds like you're piling on when you say facts about Buffalo, but they have the longest active streak missing the playoffs of any team. That's in its tie with the New York Jets, 14 seasons. General open-ended question: when does this team get back to the playoffs?
Oh, God. That's a question we ask every year in Buffalo. I can remember the last time they made the playoffs in 2011. Remember watching, they were playing the Flyers, and I thought, why is Rob Niedermeyer taking really bad penalties? Little did I think that was going to be the last time I ever saw the Sabres in the playoffs as well. The optimist in me says they're going to sneak in this year. Maybe got that last wild card spot. The pessimist in me says, tear it all down if they're out by December. That is the big thing. I'm hedging a little bit here, but at the same time, again, you have to be realistic and facts don't lie, even though they always say don't let facts get in the way of a good story. But I think if they're going to make it, they're going to sneak in this year. Otherwise, burn it all down if it's not going by December.
Does it make it even harder that it's kind of getting worse? Like, I'm looking over the last few years, and they end with 91 points, then 84 points, then 79 points last year. So it's not necessarily getting better, which I imagine makes it even harder for fans and the organization to stay patient.
Mm-hmm. Oh, another thing that factored in last year, coaching change. And organizationally, it's been proven people are resistant to change. Scientific studies have been done by this. Organizational and psychological studies have been done by this. Lindy Ruff comes in for his second tour of duty. The team's getting ready to go to Europe. Lindy had maybe a week and a half to put his philosophies in, and then the team's got to pack up and go to Europe. I mean, they're juggling 14 different playbooks here. It's not easy to do. There's this whole wave of change going in. And it took the team a long time just to get on the same page together. I would say probably the last 20, 30 games last season, but you kind of saw the rhythm going. They were also boosted by James Reimer in goal, who gave them consistency and basically supplanted UPL and kind of helped build some good vibes among the team final year. They also lost Josh Norris, who got acquired in the trade from Ottawa and was hurt. So there went that offensive production or productivity or possible productivity as well, too. So yeah, I think that's kind of what's going to change. They're going to have a full training camp with Lindy. Some of these guys are, playing for roster spots. Alex Tuck has a lot to prove this year. He's in the final year of his contract as well, too. So, I really think this is going to be a make or break time for this team and for a lot of guys on this team.
Rachel, when you mentioned Montreal, it makes me think of, it's a different era and the games need to be entertaining, right? I mean, and you want to entertain the fans. And so I remember being at a bar, shocker, and a fan had come up to me in Montreal and just said, man, you guys are boring. I mean, games are 2-1, 3-1, and I said, well, would you rather have us win hockey games or, be a 5-3 game and lose a hockey game? Oh, no. We want you to, we want to win hockey games and, get a chance to win the Stanley Cup. And so it makes me think of Buffalo, or is that getting old that they're entertaining? They've almost, in their games last year, there's almost a combined 600 goals. Basically, there's 6.5 to 7 goals a game. So it's entertainment, but is it time from the fan standpoint, like, if we got to dumb this game down, we just want to win, or do you think they're kind of in the middle of that?
I wrote an article either last week or 2 weeks ago about, have you ever seen the ESPN, the Sports Misery Index that just came out? It's the interactive tool that measures, how long you've been a fan, how miserable are you? I thought, Buffalo Sabres fans were voted as, being in agony. I talked to one guy who said, if they just make the playoffs, that's all I ask for. I will cry if they make the playoffs. That's what someone said to me. And I said, wow, y'all are, the thing is, the fan base here is very passionate. It is very invested. It is, if you look at social media, they can be very frustrated as well, too. It's almost as if seeing what's going to happen is entertaining within itself, and the winning is a bonus. And I don't know if Sabre fans have been relegated to that, or if hope springs eternal every year. I'm an optimist, but I'm also a skeptic by nature. So I'm kind of like, oh, they're going to do well, but when it comes to the fans, there is definitely an investment in this fan base. I mean, in the Buffalo news, the Sabres are one of the top readership topics as well. People still care here.
All right, Rachel, I'm going to ask you about something actually positive, I promise. No negative spins to this whatsoever. The Sabres have one of the best power forwards and goal scorers in the game. Tage Thompson scores 44 this year, tied with Alex Ovechkin. I think it was tied for third in the NHL. He had 47 a couple of years ago. Talk to us about his development into the position and how important he is for a team that clearly needs to score goals.
Hey, Tage, and he was also the leading American-born scorer last year as well. I know he and Rasmus Dahlin and Alex Tuch, those are the marquee players as well. And as you see by Tage's contract, he's invested in this, but he can't do it alone. He cannot. And it's been kind of hard. There's the salary cap limitation. Free agency, let's be real, it wasn't great this year. Sabres also need to do a better job of building around Tage in particular as well, too. And that's kind of a long-term project, but we can't go long-term. I mean, it's win now or else. And let's be real. You don't win games, things are going to change. So Tage is a leader. He has to be a leader. Also, he helped his profile by scoring the golden goal in the World Championships as well. So everybody's going to be looking at him right now, which is actually takes a little pressure off Alex Tuch again as he's going into the contract year. Also, but Tage is one of those guys. He's got to set the tone for the rest of the roster as well, too, and guys will follow. And I think kind of going off the path a little bit, acquiring guys like Josh Doan and Michael Kesselring will kind of help buy that in. I get the impression from Josh Doan and Michael Kesselring is that they kind of want to help turn things around. It's not an easy thing to do in Buffalo, but if you can get those guys that are flexible, that have a little belief, they help players like Tage Thompson, not just on the ice, but in the locker room and in the cultural dynamic of a team and of a roster.
All right, Rachel, we got plenty more with you next. We're going to hit a break here on DLS. Rachel will be right back. Don't go anywhere. First, I get to tell you guys about being a diehard. We still have our $36 sale, football club sale going on right now. $36 if you scan that QR code right there to become a diehard, and you know what you get. You get a free t-shirt. Of course, you can pick one of these awesome ones. The 88 Club, Dem Boys, and can't even see the one on the bottom, but there are some awesome new shirts here at DLLS. You can get some awesome other shirts as well. We have the DLLS collection, which I'm actually wearing. Otter shirt as well. You know what? Let's talk about that Otter shirt real quick.
I knew.
Because Luds yesterday, if you missed the show, I walked into the studio yesterday wearing that shirt and was all excited because I said, Luds, we're matching. Wearing the same shirt, same colored pants, looking the same top to bottom, looking fly. And Luds marched into GM Ben's office and forced him to give him a different shirt so he wouldn't be matching. He didn't think that I'd be hurt by that, but I told my therapist about it for an hour last night.
Who's the dumb one? Who got a new shirt?
You did. Did you get to keep it? Hey-o. Hey-o. Which one was it? It was DLS, one of the originals.
Yep.
But you can get the DLS collection, which I'm wearing here. We have tons of cool shirts on that with this. This is the barbecue one, I believe. We have the Dallas versus all y'all. We have the crazy, horrifying mascot one, the Nolan Ryan, the Big Tex. There's tons of awesome shirts. If you become a diehard, you get awesome exclusive events. We had Bobby's film event, I believe, last Monday, which went super well. Got some diehards into the studio. They got to sign the wall. Some traditions building here that you can be a part of by becoming a diehard. You also get all of the writing from all of our teams here, ad-free. You get all kinds of things. You get your own little custom card, which I still never got. So I don't know if I'm actually a diehard or not, but I know our diehards have it. It's a very cool card. So become a diehard today. We also have the DLS newsletter that goes out every day in the morning, giving you the latest and greatest on all of our shows, articles, and some things popping up. So make sure you check that out, alldls.com/diehard. $36 football intro offer will not last forever. Make sure you scan that code now and become a diehard. All right, let's bring Rachel back in for some more Buffalo Sabres talk. Luds, you're up.
Well, I want to take off on your foolish question you just asked Rachel.
Perfect.
You said they need to score. They're top 10 in scoring, and they're worse than keeping the puck out of
What I mean is they
what do you
need
mean?
to keep scoring.
Okay. Well, and then I see, Rachel, we got little people here on the side that are writing stuff in. It says, thank goodness the Blues didn't keep Tage Thompson. See where Ardell wrote that?
Yes.
That might be a good question because who's coming on the show on Friday? GM Doug Armstrong. That might be a question for Army.
There you go. Anyway,
Rachel, so there is a player on that team that I am very fond of, and it's Alex Tuch. I thought the player would look really good here. It sounds like he wants to be a Buffalo Sabre. How and what do you think they have to do to get him done so he stays there maybe to the end of his career?
You know, it's funny. I take another view of that. Alex Tuch is in a very advantageous position in this final year of his contract. He can re-sign. I mean, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here. I mean, Craig, you know the league, but he can sign another deal. He can sign a short-term deal. He can, again, if the team's going south, he can say, trade me at the deadline, or he can just let his contract expire and become one of the prime free agents July 1st, or he can pull a Mitch Marner and do that as well. He has a lot of options here as well. The Sabres, I mean, the pressure's on them to re-sign him. That's the thing. I think it's winning. I don't think it's just the money as well. We're going to see the salary cap again, as we know, go up as well too. And I think they got to tell him, also you're a leader, and I think Alex also needs to rise to the occasion to leader. But again, I'm going to go back. I'm going to keep saying this. Alex Tuch has such a distinct advantage going into this season from his own personal security standpoint.
All right, Rachel. I wasn't sure if I should ask you, but you mentioned that you've been around that area for a while, so you might be the perfect person to ask. Jack Eichel. The whole situation with Jack Eichel, his surgery, Buffalo not wanting him to do the surgery. He goes to Vegas, wins the Stanley Cup, was maybe the best player in the playoffs, didn't end up winning the Conn Smythe because of Marchessault. Take us through that scenario. Why did Buffalo not allow him to get that surgery or not want him to get that surgery, and kind of how that whole process went?
I'm going to full disclosure. I was covering college football at the time for the news and college basketball. So I was not keenly in tune to that situation, but in looking at it from a distance, I could see the risk reward option with the Sabres and how Jack went on his own to get an opinion and said, if I'm getting my facts correct, tell me. I mean, this is 4 or 5 years ago. Yep. It seems like a lifetime ago as well, too. And, I remember thinking it was a push-pull between the franchise's star player and the franchise. And there was, there were discussion about mismanagement there was a question about Jack Eichel's long-term health and his long-term career as well, too. And I mean, and also, well, again, we know the history in Buffalo. What a great situation for for Jack to be in to begin with as well, too. So goes to Vegas, helps them win a Stanley Cup. And, and the reporters I've talked to before coming onto the beat, they said that Jack has good things to say about living in Buffalo and being in Buffalo. He always asks about the Bills as well, too. Ultimately, in retrospect, it was a business decision. It was a long-term health decision. There was a high risk reward again as well, too.
Let me ask you then this follow-up. If they did let him get that surgery and everything went fine, would he still be in Buffalo? Or would this kind of not making the playoff situation have gotten to a player like that and he would have moved on at some point?
That's a good question, and you also have to ask about some of these guys. Well, if they haven't made the playoffs, why is Alex Tuch still here? He's on a contract. That's the answer. Right. Why is Tage Thompson? Why aren't these guys asking for trades at this point? Well, I have not gotten to the locker room. I have not gotten a chance to talk to a lot of players yet. Again, still my first year on the beat, but there's still a fundamental faith in here in what this group is capable of in the locker room and whatnot. That's the sense that I get as well. I don't get the sense that people are giving up. Again, I get the sense from those last 25, 30 games, a couple of these guys realized, hey, maybe we can build on this as well. Now that we got a full training game again, let's start really embracing the Lindy Ruff playbook.
You mentioned the Buffalo Bills are, not bad football team, got a pretty good quarterback. Do you know what his dream is? Josh Allen's dream?
Play for the Buffalo Sabres.
No.
Oh.
He wants to attend one playoff
There
game.
you go.
There you go. He just wants to attend a game, which, Rachel, I asked the same thing of Joe. I want to talk about Terry Pegula a little bit, and get your opinion, because, I guess I'm used to, in this sport, playoffs are what matter. The 82 games are one thing, 83 on is big. And I asked Joe, how does he handle the last 14 years of not being a playoff team for the fans and everything else? So just curious, does he ever, it sounds like he's kind of a hands-off kind of owner, let guys do their job. Because I know some owners that would say this is unacceptable. we're changing something, and they haven't found the right thing. Where do you feel Pegula is when it comes to input and maybe not as much input, staying away?
Again, I am surprised at how front-facing, hands-off. But again, we don't know what goes on behind the scenes. I have not learned a lot of that as well. I'll tell you, the one person we're not talking about in this equation is Kim Pegula. She was very hands-on with the Sabres before she got sick a few years ago. And, she was the one who made a lot of the decisions in the organization. I've been at the news since 2018. I would say 18 to 22. Kim was very much the point person who made the big decisions in the Sabres. And when she got sick, it fell under Terry's umbrella. Kim's got a long road back. Let's believe it or not. That's the person who that was under her umbrella. I've said that word twice. I knew that. But I was surprised at that. Here's the other person I think should become a bigger decision maker in the process to augment Kevyn Adams, to kind of be the no person to Kevyn Adams. Jarmo Kekalainen, who has GM experience. They bring him in as a senior advisor as well. I read about him earlier this year, back in May, after he was hired. He's a guy who's not afraid to take risks. He is very analytical when it comes to making decisions. He's a very good poker player. He's also a very good pickleball player too. So I think if this is the case, Terry's got to allow decision makers like Kevyn, in conjunction with Jarmo Kekalainen, in conjunction with Eric Staal, another guy they brought in for player personnel. Got to develop that brain trust now for this team to be competitive. Maybe Jarmo Kekalainen is the one who says, no, Kevyn, you might want to pull back on that. Maybe Eric Staal is the guy who says, you might want to bring this guy. And Eric Staal was brought in to really forge more bonds with the players as well, because you need a guy like that who's had enough playing experience, but who's still close enough in age. He understands what these guys are going through every day. So I think if there's going to be any kind of group brain trust, if you will, it's not going to be on Terry. Terry's got to trust Kevyn Adams, Jarmo Kekalainen, Eric Staal in that group. And you're Jerry Fortin, the assistant GM, to make those decisions, because as we've seen, Terry's very invested in the Bills right now, and the Bills are the cash cow for the Pegula unfortunately. And another one, so is Penn State hockey. Look at how much money the Pegulas gave to get Penn State hockey going.
All right, Rachel, we have a pretty exciting time coming up here in February with the Olympics. NHL players going back, very exciting for anyone of any team. But for you specifically, there's a few players to kind of keep an eye on. So if you were to pick right now, which Sabres roster players would play in Italy, and what do they have to do to get there?
I would put Tage Thompson going to Italy for the United States. I put Alex Tuch on the team as well, too. So these guys can get into that competition. See what it takes to win. Be around other players like, we don't know. I think Matthew Tkachuk will be back around by then. Those first six as well. The goalies haven't been picked yet. I think Connor Hellebuck, even though he plays for the Jets, should be on that team as well, too. To get in there, definitely Tage Thompson and Alex Tuch. They've got to be in there. And Tuch's a little more of an outlier. I think Tage has done nothing but help his cause as far as making the Olympic roster goes. But those are the two. Former Sabres, Eichel as well. JJ Turker was a guy I thought was going to be for Germany if he was with the Sabres, but now he's with Utah as well. You
read their points off the last 3 years, didn't you?
Yeah.
What were the points again?
79 this year, 84 last year, 91 in 22-23.
Okay, Rachel, then you've heard those numbers. You know those numbers. Can the Sabres get to 92, 94 points this year and make the playoffs? I don't know where that number is, but I'm going to say it's somewhere in that ballpark. Yes? No? Maybe so.
I just saw an over-under. Right? I just saw an over-under for the playoffs as well. My short-term memory is terrible as well, though.
And I will add to that, if they do, let me add to that. What if they can and do, what's the biggest factor in getting to that point?
In getting to that point, I'm going to say they got to develop consistency during the regular season. Piece of advice that Bob Airey gave me years ago when we were talking about how much things have changed in the NHL. He said, got to develop consistency during the season, whether, goal scoring, defense, that. And Bob Airey says to me, pardon my French, he says, God, you lose 5 or 6 in a row in November, you're going to get your ass handed to you in April when you're trying to make the playoffs. And I said, it's very good advice. It was very much food for thought he gave me, and that always stuck with me. So the Sabres have to develop and find consistency in season. They can't stumble out of the gates the first month.
91 was the Canadians last year, so you need to get at least 91.
That's if they get the 90.
And that was a pretty big gap between them and the Senators in that wild card. All right, Rachel, thank you so much for coming on. We're going to ask you one more question that we've asked all of our guests on the other 31, and that is, from your perspective being in Buffalo, what do you see from the Dallas Stars and their expectations in 2025 and 26?
I put the Dallas Stars in the gold standard for the Western Conference, and with Winnipeg, with Vegas, until very recently, with Edmonton as well. And I asked this during the spring, I said, why do they keep meeting up with Edmonton in the playoffs? But, I was like, this always happens. Is there a Twilight Zone vibe in Dallas right now? But the bar is set for the Dallas Stars. I have a little bit of a concern with new coach coming in, but the NHL is known for recycling coaches as well. But I like the foundation of this team that keeps coming in. Love Ottinger in goal. I mean, you build around him in Dallas. Jamie Benn, Mr. Consistency, ageless Duchesne. He's one of those guys, every time I see him, I said, geez, he's still in the NHL, but I love that he's made a career. Rupa Hintz, I'm going to butcher that name, with terrible pronunciations. I love the roster they have in Dallas. That's a team I want to see every year, not just achieve, but overachieve, because I believe in Dallas, overachieving is the standard there. But they just hit a wall in those conference finals. And this has got to be the year they break through. I thought last year was going to be the year they break through.
All right, Rachel, thank you so much for joining us.
Rachel.
That was a lot of fun.
Thank
Rachel,
you guys. It was
Rachel,
great.
Of course, and you're welcome back anytime. That's Rachel Lenzi of the Buffalo News. Good luck this year.
I'll be glad.
First year on the beat.
Right,
Enjoy it. Take care, Rachel. All right, Luds. That's it. Buffalo Sabres Day.
Hey,
in the books.
Since we were talking about Olympic stuff, is Billy Guerin GM?
He's the GM of USA Hockey and also the Minnesota Wild. And
I know that, but I meant the
yes, it was the same 4 nations and Olympics was anyone who was named to those.
You could have just said yes.
Yes.
Okay. But we're having Billy on too.
Bill Guerin will also join our show, I believe, on Tuesday. So we have Doug Armstrong coming up on Friday. We have player from the Dallas Stars. I'm not going to say it yet, but we have a current active player for the Dallas Stars on Monday and Bill Guerin on Tuesday. But tomorrow, Vancouver Canucks Day. It'll be Luds. It'll be Owen Newkirk sitting in this seat and Sean Shapiro remote. I believe Sam Nessler will not be on the show because he's uninvited when Sean is on. But thank you guys so much for joining today.
When Sean comes?
Yes. Thank you guys so much for joining today. For Craig Ludwig.
What is that?
For Kachiapalaba. How's that?
That ain't right.
For Sam Nessler, we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Wait, how do you get a day off?
We all silly like the mayor.